We spend so much time talking about the power and potential of AI when we turn it on, but what about when its job is done? See, in high-stakes industries, decommissioning an AI isn't just some afterthought, it's a critical process where getting it wrong can have some really serious consequences.
Okay, so let's just put the question out there. The project's over, the model is being replaced, or maybe its whole purpose just isn't relevant anymore. What actually happens now? Is it really as simple as flipping a switch or deleting a file? Well, the short answer? It's a hard no. And as we're about to see, the hidden risks of getting this wrong are way more significant than you might think.
So here's what we're going to cover. First, we'll dive into what I call the forgotten final act of AI. Then we'll get really specific about why retirement is not the same thing as deletion. After that, we'll hunt down the lingering ghost of authority that causes so many problems, walk through the right way to do a controlled shutdown, and wrap it all up by talking about your responsibility in all of this. Right, so let's tackle this first big idea, this misconception of just turning it off. In regulated fields, like life sciences or manufacturing, thinking you can just turn off an AI is a really dangerous oversimplification. And informal retirement doesn't just leave a few loose ends. You're basically planting hidden risks that can come back to haunt a project months or even years down the line. So let's be crystal clear on what retirement really means here. It is not just hitting the delete key. It's a formal, deliberate process. It's about methodically removing the AI's authority, revoking all its access, stopping it from running, preserving all the evidence for audits, and, critically, cutting off every single one of its dependencies.
And look, this distinction, it's everything. Because think about it. If a system that's supposed to be off can still influence anything in your environment, well, then it isn't truly retired, is it? That lingering influence is exactly where the danger is hiding. And this isn't some abstract idea, right? Retirement gets triggered by all sorts of real-world stuff. Maybe the system's job is just done, or a better one comes along, or maybe problems pop up. The model's performance starts to drift, new regulations appear, or it just gets too expensive to keep running. The key takeaway here is that you have to plan for these things before they happen. This brings us to the core of the problem, what I like to call the lingering ghost of authority. This is what makes a sloppy retirement so risky. See, when you give an AI the power to act, that power doesn't just vanish when you shut down the main app. No, it can stick around, deep in the wiring of your systems.
And this quote, man, it just nails it. I want you to really let this sink in. Authority persists unless explicitly removed. It doesn't fade away, it doesn't expire, it just waits. And unless you take deliberate, documented action to get rid of it, you have to assume that authority is still alive. Okay, so where does this authority actually live? This diagram here, it's basically our map. Think of it in layers. Up at the top, you've got the control plane. That's where decisions are made and where authority is handed out. That authority then flows down to the execution plane. And this is where things happen, in IT systems that manage data and in what's called OT, or operational technology, which controls actual physical equipment. Okay, now see these highlighted red paths? This is where it all goes wrong. These are the ghost connections we've been talking about. You might shut down the main AI, but a hidden link stays active, maybe to an IT system, or even worse, to an OT system that controls physical hardware. Leaving even one of these paths open is a major governance failure, and it's exactly the kind of thing auditors are paid to find.
And you've got to understand, the stakes are totally different depending on where that ghost is hiding. In IT systems, the risk is usually about data integrity or, a failed audit. Bad, but manageable. But in OT systems, we're talking about disabling physical control. The risks there are so much more severe. We're talking process incidents, safety issues, and even physical damage to really expensive equipment. So how does this stuff actually happen in the real world? Oh, it's the classic mistakes, every time. A team disables the user interface but completely forgets the back-end service is still running, or a really powerful service account just gets left active. And maybe the most dangerous one of all, an undocumented integration that nobody remembers is left running, quietly pulling strings in the background. These are exactly the kind of failures that make auditors' eyes light up. Okay, we've spent a lot of time on the problem. So what's the solution? Let's talk about the controlled shutdown. And let's be clear, this isn't just a cleanup task for an intern. It's a formal, disciplined process that demands the exact same rigor as deploying the system in the first place. So this process really comes down to 4 crucial steps. First, you assess the impact. You map out every single dependency upstream and downstream. Second,
And this is a total non-negotiable checkpoint. You get formal sign-off from all the system and quality owners. Third, you document everything you do. And finally, you verify. And this isn't just checking a box. You need to generate actual proof that the system is fully offline and totally isolated from everything else.
And get this, your job isn't done just because the system is offline. All of that evidence, the logs, the change history, the validation records, all of it has to be archived according to your company's official policies. Why? Because if an auditor asks for the history of that system 2 years from now, you have to be able to pull it up. All right, last thing. Let's be super clear about what this explainer is for and what it isn't for. Because what you should take away from this is very specific. Look, our goal here is to get you and your team thinking the right way, to give you a solid framework for handling an AI's end of life. We're explaining the mechanics and the risks. What we are not doing is giving you the authority to actually retire a system or setting a policy on how long to keep the data. Those decisions are always governed by your own organization's specific rules. And that really brings us to the big takeaway. The one thing you should remember if you forget everything else. The care, the planning, and the meticulous discipline you use to bring a powerful AI system online has to be matched exactly when you take it offline. Responsible retirement isn't just about cleaning up. It's the final, absolutely essential step in eliminating risk and closing the loop on the entire AI lifecycle.